Hey everyone, so I wanted to post my thoughts on the modern controls in Street Fighter 6. I know all the FGC pros have already done this already, but I just wanted to document my opinion on them and also talk about the community's reactions to them. In the meantime, I'm going to play some videos I recorded of me playing Cammy with modern controls. To note, I never used Cammy in the previous games because I'm not overly good with the rushdown mix-up characters. As you'll see here, my placement matches are going to show up, and I've won a whopping 3 out of the 10 of them. So initially I did play with Ken, and using him with modern controls, I ranked him up before moving on to try someone else. What really got me thinking about all this was the deviation of opinion on modern controls between what we might call the FGC icons and then the average but earnest fans of the Street Fighter series. If you're not familiar, in summation, most pros have no issue with modern controls. They think the negatives for modern controls outweigh the positives, or at least balance them out. After all, with modern controls, you lose a considerable amount of the moves in your arsenal, and your damage does 20% less than it would if you were using classic controls. Also, in some instances, you may be locked to a specific output for special moves. As an example of that, Ken on modern controls can only throw a medium Hadouken. While he does have access to all 3 levels of the Hurricane kick, he doesn't have that same access for the Hadouken. So this means that a Ken player tossing Hadoukens has to rely a lot more on spacing, because he can't mix up the speed that he's throwing the Hadoukens. So he can use an EX version that flies much faster across the screen, but that does require some of his drive gauge, and I don't really think that's the best use if you're just using it to try to pressure your opponent into jumping or blocking damaged hits. Anyway, the consensus on modern controls seems to shift a bit as you get into the bigger pool of Street Fighter 6 players. While I think the majority are still fine with modern controls, there definitely seems to be an audible group that hates them. And they accuse modern controls of bringing in normies and placing them in higher ranks than they deserve to be in naturally. And what I mean by naturally is the rank that they would be at were they playing with classic controls. While there is a recognition that damage output is cut, one of the biggest gripes also tends to focus on the ability to input special moves with a single button or a single direction along with the said button. So my thoughts on it. Well, as you can see, I'm playing modern controls, so I think the abridged version is that I'm for modern controls. But interestingly, looking back on it, if this were Street Fighter 4, I probably wouldn't have been. Street Fighter 4 was the only other Street Fighter game where I consistently played ranked matches. I was younger then, I had more time on my hands and less responsibilities, and even though I played games like it was a hobby, I could still get very competitive. So I think back then I would have griped at the idea of modern controls as something that makes it much easier for people to play the game. And like some of those opposed to modern currently argue, play it at a higher level than they quote-unquote deserve. The purists play classic, I might have argued, and the cheap play modern. Gatekeeping at its finest. Now though, I'm nearing middle-aged and juggling a family and a full-time job. Video games don't get nearly the time they used to, and something like modern controls appeals to me now. When I first started playing Street Fighter 6, I did start with the classic controls. I mean, after all, I'm still most familiar with them. But going into the combo trials with Ken, I recognize my time crunch much more. I'm not the best fighting game player, not at all. I've said that multiple times before. I just really love the genre. So it can take me a while to get down combos that are a bit more than a character's shorter end bread and butter. With modern controls, I was able to speed that part up considerably and move on to other aspects of the game. Reacting to jump-ins, for example, has also been made easier, and I choke less when I see them coming. Not always. Sometimes as you watch this Cammy gameplay, like right there I did do the anti-air, but sometimes I will still choke and just hold back and block anything that comes in. But for once, I was having matches with Ken in Platinum where I was focusing on genuinely trying to get in on the opponent and playing footsies to land a combo. even if it is an auto combo. But overall, modern controls, though they did take some getting used to after playing Classic for so long, they have made my time with this game more enjoyable, and I have a bigger desire, a stronger desire to play the game. And I think that's what Capcom wants, right? More people to have a deeper interest in playing this game. So, have modern controls promoted me up to higher ranks than I would be otherwise with classic controls? Are the detractors right in that regard? I can only speak from an anecdotal perspective. In Street Fighter 4, I never ranked a character up higher than C+. And in Street Fighter 5, which admittedly I played very little of online, the last ranked match I played was the one where I leveled up my character to silver. And now in Street Fighter 6, I ranked Ken up to platinum. So yeah, I would say that modern controls helped me rank up significantly higher than if I had stayed on classic controls. Does that mean that modern controls are OP? I don't think so, and here's why. I went into Battle Hub, and using modern controls and a character I never used before, I played against a classic controlled silver level Chun-Li. I played over 30 matches with this person, and I won a whopping 5. So if you have Street Fighter 6, feel free to search my name in the game. It's the same as my YouTube name and my Steam name. And you'll see my win-loss record. It was not pretty at all. But I wanted to try a different character outside of Ken to see if I'd be interested in playing anyone else in rank. Modern controls didn't spare me from the shellacking that I received there. You still need to understand your character, be familiar with what moves they have and how to effectively use them. Modern controls are not dynamic controls. And I think here's a good time to point out what I've seen with playing matches online. People who refuse a rematch after losing to me in ranked tend to be the people who don't learn from their mistakes. In my journey toward Platinum Ken, I had several silver and gold ranked matches that featured opponents that repeatedly jumped in, even after taking a Shoryuken anti-air. And I'm not talking about just jumping in 1 or 2 times in a row, and then trying something else. I'm talking about guys that were doing this 5, 6, 7 times in a row. They would get hit with the anti-air, fall down. As soon as they get up, they jump in again and just repeat the same pattern. I can't help but feel that those are the people who think modern controls are a bad idea because modern controls expose weaknesses they don't or can't immediately overcome. Trust me, I'm sympathetic to the plight here. Excessively jumping in is a hard habit to break and one that I still do. But it's a problem with the game plan of the person doing it. Modern controls are just revealing that weakness at a lower level. There is one argument by those who are opposed to modern controls that I can fully sympathize with. There's a fear that making a game more accessible to normies will water the product down. As someone who has watched this happen with several other forms of entertainment I enjoy, I can understand that concern. And I think there are instances where gatekeeping should be encouraged. But here's the thing that some of the pros have argued. Knowing and inputting a special move is only a part of playing a fighting game. A knowledge of spacing, different character attacks, recognizing patterns in the strategies of your opponent, reading and reacting, these and more make up a fighting game match. So making it easier to input a Shoryuken may help with reacting to anti-airs, but it's not necessarily going to help with those other aspects that make up the sweet science of a fighting game. And combined with the drawbacks of modern controls, I think incorporating them is not going to damage the product on its own. Instead, I think it will draw more people to the product. More money in Capcom's pocket means more production later on. It's important to remember that something needs to be profitable for a for-profit business to keep making it. And when it comes to fighting games, the hard reality is that they really are a niche genre among video games. Consider this, in terms of individual sales, the highest unit selling fighting game is Street Fighter 2. And to note, I'm omitting brawler games like Super Smash Bros. From this. Street Fighter 2, across every version of it, accumulated has sold 22.9 million copies. But that number still falls short from 2018's God of War game, which sold over 23 million copies alone. And when looking at other fighting game franchises, Mortal Kombat is the highest selling franchise at 79 million copies. Now, keep in mind, that's the franchise, not just a single game. And that is nowhere near the single game GTA 5 and its sales tally of 185 million copies, let alone the GTA franchise altogether of 400 million plus units. So what's the point of denoting that? When comparing the biggest guns of fighting games against the biggest guns of action titles, a very prominent genre in video games, we can see which one sells far more prominently and is vastly more popular. As such, I don't think we should treat fighting games like they are an inevitability of the future, and it may be worth opening the gate just a little bit to keep fighting games a genre that continues into future decades. So those are my thoughts on this. I will leave you to watch the rest of my matches here. I enjoyed fighting the Guile here that you currently are watching. We had a couple of matches and then unfortunately didn't get to finish it out. And then the last match here is against another Zangief. And in that instance, Capcom decided that they didn't want us to finish the match. You'll see what I mean coming up.
Guile wins! Round one. Fight! Sonic boom! Blade perfect! Sonic down!
Get away! Fire arrows! There!
Cammy wins! Here comes a new challenger! Round one. Fight! Brace yourself!
Too bad.
Round two. Fight! No escape! Cammy wins! Round one. Fight!